Hello everybody. Thank you for another version, episode three of Sirens and Summations. And I'm really, really grateful for the incredible outpouring for this newsletter. I want to be thanking my partner, Dave Bruno, who's helped me so much with being able to organize it. As many of you know, I've been in this mindset space for many, many years before it was fashionable. And it's based on, in my deep belief, that your mindset is so important in living as much as you can joyfully in the present moment. And that is not a Pollyannic point of view, but rather a very useful life guide towards those ups and downs and sorrows and difficult times that you cry and things of that nature. And I think it's a philosophy that's much needed in today's society. So I'm so glad to see that that space is no longer considered odd or strange. But I really want to go back. I want to wind back. It should be a throwback Thursday to, where all this began. If you've been following my newsletter, you'll know a lot of my thought process about how to live my life and the things that I've done and the directions that I've taken when I've crossed a path where I didn't know which way to go have been formulated in many ways from my experiences as an EMT as well as a trial attorney. But going all the way back to the EMT in my teenage years was very, very formative to me. But I want to add a great influencer in my life, and that's what this newsletter is about. And I think that this individual, more than anyone in my life that I can think of, and I've had a lot of wise teachers, a lot of smart people, a lot of people have coached me and helped me and through things in my life and have gotten me to where I've gotten in my life. But I think the foremost wisest person I ever met was a man, Father Walter Heath. For those who don't know, I went to Providence College in Rhode Island. It is a Dominican college, and it was an extremely conservative school. At the time, single-sex dorms and no drinking on campus, things of that nature, priests walking around with the full cassocks on and the rosary beads. And honestly, the first semester I hated Providence College. I was a little bit of a wild man in high school, and I didn't know the lifestyle of what I was getting into, which would turn out to be a pivotal thing in my life more than anything ever in my life that changed me. I believe, without any question, for the far, far better and formulated my life. Those Dominican priests were extremely powerful intellects, and I was captivated and mesmerized. And in fact, I actually gave thought of going into the novitiate when I was in college. So it was like a 180 turnaround for me. And one of those individuals was my father, Walter Heath. And as is in the newsletter, I want to amplify this a little bit. Father Walter Heath was a person who caught my attention because he would walk around campus talking to squirrels and talking to trees and leaves and animals, and he would sit and talk to himself. And everybody would laugh at him kind of or thought he was odd and strange, but there was something that captivated me about the man. There was he was a tall, lanky, stately looking elderly gentleman. And as it turns out, I realized that Father Heath wasn't crazy. I mean, he was a professor. He was considered an incredible intellect in the Dominican order, which is saying a lot because those Dominicans are pretty darn smart. And he was also the head resident of all of the dormitories. So obviously, he was a person that the school felt had the pragmatic ability to deal with children, whatever. But I'll have to say, Father Heath, and generally speaking, was a rather I'd say aloof, and I use that word very carefully because he wasn't approachable. I'll put it that way. But I used to watch him in the cafeteria, and he would often sit by himself, where the other priests usually had the kids around, and he would eat ice cream. Now I'm thinking about it, or quiche, as I say in the newsletter story, and I would watch him smacking his lips and acting weird and talking to himself. And he would always walk over to where the utensils were, and they would set up the trays, the workers, and the forks and the knives and things. And you have those little bins that you pull things out of. And Father would always bend down on his knees, and you could tell it was a struggle. He would have to hold himself to do it. He'd open up the bottom compartment where the things were stored, and he always took his utensils out of there. So there were like all these like intriguing things that he would do. And much like the parable where if you lie your seed, I was just telling my law partner about this today, lay your seed on gravel or cement, it's not going to grow. But if you give it fertile soil and you water it, it will take root. And I so much of Father Heath I realized today, and I have for many years, but as I get older, were just these seeds he was putting into fertile ground. He didn't need to go look for the fertile ground. He waited for the fertile ground to come to him. And I'm so glad that I did that outreach. And I remember sitting down with him at the cafeteria one time when he was all by himself. and asking him, "Why do you bend down to get your utensils?" And in his very Bostonian, voice, he explained to me that he was a commander in the Navy. Commander in the Navy. Wow. He had a life-altering incident where his submarine was grounded and German U-boats were dropping depth charges and everybody thought they were going to die. And he made a commitment that if he lived, he was going to devote his life towards God and try to bring every single person he came into contact closer to God, closer to Jesus. That was his life's mission. And he did survive and he kept his promise. And when he was talking about the ships, and he was talking about everybody had a role and everybody had a duty, and there's all this hierarchy. But in truth, everybody's job really mattered. And sometimes we take for granted those who are doing the grunt work, if you will, for lack of a better expression. And so he said, "You see that man right there? He works a 14-hour day. He bends down constantly to get the stuff from the lower drawer and put it up there so that you can just walk up and you and your young body and your young age can just pull the utensil out," and that he felt that this was just one small act of kindness. Here it comes. Here's the message. One small act of kindness can make a difference. Even if the gentleman didn't realize it or didn't know it, it didn't make a difference. He was doing something that he knew would, in some very, very minor and insignificant way, change this guy's life for the better. He then went on to explain in that particular instance the taste of quiche, which I had never had before, and identified every ingredient in the quiche, blessed the people that made the quiche, blessed the farmers who made the eggs, blessed he went through this whole thing and talked to me about the texture of the quiche. And the funniest thing is he left the table. And I remember I got my first piece of quiche because I used to think it was disgusting. But he actually convinced me. He was a great orator. He was a great communicator. And again, he was a little centric, but he had a way of communicating ideas that clearly you realize later in life he was laying seeds. And one of the last things I'd like to tell you, and I could write a book about Father Heath, was something that he said in a sermon that changed my life. I mean, doing small acts of mercy and kindness for people, I got from what he was saying. Leaning into his present moment and talking to a squirrel or a tree was meditative, to him, was connecting with nature. It didn't have to be so big. And he had said to me actually when he was sitting down, "I'm the dean of residence, and so I've got those responsibilities, and I got my students, and I got those responsibilities, and I've got my congregation with my sermons, and I got those responsibilities. But right now, I can enjoy the quiche." Shh. Powerful. Are you listening? Father, he's throwing the wisdom out there. Anyway, during the sermon, he was talking about when he became a priest, he became daunted with the idea that he wasn't able to change anybody completely towards Jesus, as he put it. It doesn't make a difference what your faith is. This was Father Heath's story. And he became overwhelmed by it. And then he realized that he could never completely change a person. And so, what his goal became at that point in time was that everyone he encountered in his life, he wanted to change them 1 millionth towards goodness, 1 millionth towards God, 1 millionth towards being maybe a better person, 1 millionth towards less depression, 1 millionth towards less anxiety, 1 millionth towards the better in whatever way that was. And when all those little moments of millionths added up to one person, he wanted God to take his life. And I cannot explain to you the power that that thought process has had for me throughout my life. And so I say to you, I've been giving quotes in the last couple of newsletters that don't look at the entire staircase, just take one step at a time. He wasn't saying don't be great. He wasn't saying don't do big things. What he was saying is that sometimes if you were like him, that we're looking at making such a monumental change that may be unrealistic in an outward and chaotic life, that you may be making a mistake because, like Einstein said, the greatest power in the world is compound interest. When you're adding up those little moments by moments by moments in the service of other people, you're not only helping yourself because you're making yourself a better person, you're helping so many people, and the compound interest of that at the end of the day, at the end of your life, is going to be huge. So many people are defeated because they can't make the big goal. So many people are defeated because they don't know what that goal is. That'll be the story of next week's newsletter. I've been through it. Okay. So many people feel, that they're not capable, that they're not good, they're not worthy, that they're depressed, that they can't make a big difference. You don't need to. The wisdom of Father Heath enjoying and leaning into the present moment with his quiche or with his ice cream is life being enjoyed in the present moment. You're entitled to do that. When he was doing his big things, he realized he couldn't make overall grandiose change, but he can make little changes, light by light, piece by piece, millionth of a person by a millionth of a person. It led me to say when he died later in life, when I heard about it, I'm like, Father, you finally hit your millionth person, your number one person, your millionth opportunity that you took advantage of in making just a little bit of a difference. And like compound interest, it made that huge, significant difference. So I really think that this is powerful. And one of the reasons why, even when I wake up sometimes and I say, I don't know what I could do that's as big as what I've done before, or has as much impact as what I did before, or what can I do in greater service than I did before, I say, relax, Bob, just do your best. Maybe today's day is just to make somebody smile. Maybe today's day is to have that extra phone call with that person at the Bianchi Low Group that you may not be representing, but you can help them out. You can give them additional information. You can give them knowledge. It may be that person that you just, like I said, smile at, or somebody that you help with their groceries. Any little thing like compound interest adds up. What are your thoughts? Sorry for the long message. Sorry for the long newsletter, but I think this is so important as a way of life. You have all these gurus out there and the 10 checklist points of this, that, and the other. Look, to me, it's as simple as this. While you're finding your purpose, pursue it with the greatest passion that you can. And each day, make a little bit more of a better difference for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for those who you meet and those who you encounter. Is it easy all the time? No. But is it worthy of an operational way of being? Absolutely. Thanks again for your support in Sirens and Summations. I look forward to next week's newsletter. Be well, be great, be the difference.